Hello, welcome. So what we have here is the final. I'm gonna try to get on it digitally on Canvas because I have like three versions of it. All right. So give me just a moment as I get your names down to give you your extra points added to your score. All right. All right. Believe I have all your names. All right, so let's go ahead and let's try this. All right. So I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna try with online. All right. Go back to this. Go to quizzes. Test 3 final. Preview probably could do it, but I'm going to do edit so I can see the questions. I know I could do it that way. Or wait, I'm going to go back. I'm going to see what preview does. All right, that's better. All right, can you guys see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, and so I do this quite a bit. Which of the following was not? So you're looking for the wrong answer. All right. Nearly all states broadened their franchise during Jackson's time period is true. The electoral system was abolished? No, of course not. Presidential candidates are still not popularly elected. So that's the one that doesn't fit. The direct election of presidential electors is true. Increased popular participation in politics. Remember the 80%? That was incredible. The party convention system for nomination, all that is true. All right. It was not democratic in that I think you're looking at all of the above. Most democratic changes benefited only white men. Sometimes minorities suffered from the tyranny of the majority. And to an extent, populism reigned. All right, populism. Remember, I call it the lowest common denominator. So for your vote, right, a politician appeals to your base sentiments and aspirations. Okay, so yes. Andrew Jackson, we talked about, I quoted Hofstadter, and he said that political offices fell to Andrew Jackson like ripe fruit because of his demographic. He was Scots-Irish. He was a self-made man. He was from the frontier of Tennessee. He offered his voters credit and land, so mainly the access to the American dream. So absolutely. Okay, it fell perfectly for him. Alexei de Tocqueville, did he unequivocally praise the democratization of Jacksonian America without qualifications or reservations? I don't know about that one. Okay. The Trail of Tears. Look at C. The Supreme Court defended the states' rights to force Native Americans to sell their lands? No. The Supreme Court defended the Cherokee. And our president ignored their decision. So were they foolish enough not to render any evidence, written evidence of racism in the 1800s? Look at number 1 on the antebellum westward expansion assignment. And you'll see if that one's true or if it's false. Okay. Primary source evidence of racism. The Chicano perspective of the loss of Texas. Ungrateful Anglos, despite generous terms, did not fulfill their part of the bargain. capitalized upon Santa Anna's Constitution, the Seven Laws Constitution, as a convenient pretext. Core in American history highlights Mexico's refusal to accept further Anglo settlers into Texas by way of the April 6th colonization law. Anglo opposition to Santa Anna's exceedingly conservative constitution that undercut representative and local government. That's all true as well. The instructor highlights popular blame for the Mexican-American War and the Bear Flag Revolt, suggesting that the federal government was not in the proverbial driver's seat. Take a look again at number 1 in the antebellum westward expansion, and you'll see my thesis is right lined up with that. All right, you'll see that I've said before, I had read Great Man History quite a bit, making a villain out of just simply James K. Polk, John Tyler, and just a handful of politicians. But when you look further into it, right, there's plenty of evidence of popular coveting of the land, making an other of Mexican Americans and of Mexicans, etc. An unhealthy habit and cycle, stigmatizing others and coveting their land. Once again, that is on number 1 of the antebellum westward expansion, and it was spoken by John Quincy Adams, our 6th president. He was complaining. Frederick Jackson Turner, his thesis. Remember, he stated that the American West, because supposedly the dangers as well as the opportunities were indiscriminate, that it reestablished American meritocracy for those whoever were strong, intelligent, lucky enough to make it, regardless of their background. So number 13, I already said it. The gold rush data does not seem to fit his thesis. So you're looking for anything that does not highlight equality of opportunity. All right, equality of opportunity. Look near the bottom. That does not smack of equality of opportunity. Evidence against his thesis. Remember, we had 2 or 3 sections against it. One was that superior capital and money prevailed in the West like everywhere else, that it paid to be rich and have political capital. And secondly, discrimination. And we focused upon Hispanics and Asians. All right. This one, number 16, is found on number 1. I'm sorry, not number 1. Number 1 was, could the Civil War have been avoided? Number 2 was Great Man History of Abraham Lincoln. And number 3 is Court History of the U.S. This is number 3. So take a look at that and look for the alleged claim of American idealism amongst the antebellum generation. Okay. Their reforms, what did they entail? All right. And so I don't know what to say without just giving it away. And I don't want to give all of them. But they absolutely tried to salvage the nuclear family. They absolutely were against conformity to bourgeois industrializing society. All right. Antebellum reforms, prison and asylum, public education, utopian movements, the temperance movement, the Sabbath movement, the abolitionist movement, Looks like all of them to me. And then with the women, take a look at number 2 in Jacksonian America. Remember, this is a structural history of women gaining rights. So instead of looking at like great women like Susan B. Anthony, etc., I chose to go another route and to look at nameless or faceless forces. And you'll find right in there what they are. And one of these does not fit in number 2. Okay. You should be able to figure that one out pretty easily. And then number 20, that is, in fact, what I tried to convey on number 1 of the alleged causes of the Civil War, right? Remember, the Northerners were heckled and called dough faces because they're being called wimps because they wouldn't stand up to the Southerners in Congress. Especially the parvenus down in the Deep South, the nouveau riche guys. They got a taste of the better life with slaves and cotton, and they were not about to let go of it. Okay. Court history of the Civil War. Remember, you have that in number 3. You have the idealism of a new generation in the antebellum era. They rocked the boat. They forced the country to have discourse on the issue of slavery and on many other things. Then there were polarizing events in the 1850s that almost caused people to choose a side. And then you had the evolution of Lincoln taking just strong enough of a stand to alienate the South. The radical Republicans, were they the conciliatory arm of the Republican Party? I don't think so. They would not back down. They would not compromise. They were part of this generation of rocking the boat on slavery. Okay, so 23 is pretty self-explanatory from what I just said. And then number 2, in the alleged causes of the Civil War, was Abraham Lincoln a bold abolitionist from the beginning? Or do we talk about somewhat of an evolution, somewhat of character development, etc., within Lincoln in that number? So take a look at number 2, and you should be able to see that pretty quickly. The handout suggests that Lincoln first developed an empathy for slaves that rendered him personally and morally against slavery, then subsequently developed a philosophical outlook to overcome his constitutional issues shortly after the Dred Scott case. And that's exactly what it says in number 2. Then allegedly polarizing events. The fugitive slave law and the liberty laws in the North, trying to settle the slavery issue in Kansas by the vote, and then it devolved into Bleeding Kansas. Each region did come to progressively view the other as more and more stubborn and willing to go to extremes to win their ideology and to win their self-interest. And then, of course, a bold attempt by the Supreme Court to secure enslavement virtually everywhere in the form of the Dred Scott decision. So does revisionist history portray the Civil War as a moral crusade? Take a look at the last section in the alleged causes of the Civil War. And just reading a little bit of it, you'll know that one. Evidence supporting revisionist history. Racism and discrimination in the North as well as in the South. Yep. Declarations by Lincoln and Congress that combating slavery was not their primary concern. Yep. Written evidence that key political leaders stressed the need for African-American men's military help. So there may have been a selfish motive in freeing them. Yep. Revisionist data on Lincoln. His Emancipation Proclamation, you'll find in the last section, did not free all the slaves. He has a horrible sounding quote against the social and political equality of the black and white races. Evidence that he dragged his feet in confronting slavery in states where it had already been sanctioned, absolutely. Remember, he took an immediate stand when he was inaugurated against the spreading of slavery to the Western territories. But after that, it took him quite some time before the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in all the states. His refusal to place any radical Republicans in his cabinet, no, that one doesn't. That's the one that doesn't match. He put in William Seward as his Secretary of State, and William Seward was an abolitionist and a radical Republican. The textbook, which we did not use, contends that the Free Soil Party's formation signaled the inability of the existing parties to contain the political passions created by the slavery issue. That is true. Okay, yeah, that's in a textbook that we don't use. Antietam, according to the text, hosted the war's bloodiest day of battle. That is true. All right. Now, the textbook, it contends that someone's tenacity and willingness to sacrifice soldiers helped defeat the Confederacy in the South, and that someone is almost always depicted as Ulysses S. Grant. George B. McClellan was good at making the Army train and prepare for battle, but he was habitually hesitant to use them and to actually invite combat. At the end of the war, Grant's army deprived Richmond of resources and trapped Lee's mobile army, and Sherman helped break the will of the South with his destruction of Atlanta and march through South Carolina. That is all true. All right. The common narrative of Reconstruction is that waving the bloody shirt, saying, what did we fight for? What did we have our boys die for in this Civil War if the South is not going to change at all at the end of the war? The common narrative of Reconstruction is that waving the bloody shirt in response to President Johnson's lenient policies sufficed to empower Northern public sentiment to demand great changes in the South, but that black and white Republicans did not stay united and folded amidst a Southern backlash, press coverage of, quote, Negro misrule, and a presidential compromise. That is all true. Take a look at Reconstruction. Gosh, I think you'll find it in 1 and 2. There are 2 sections on Dunning's thesis. All right. Take a look at Dunning's thesis, and then after that, you have to take the next step and to say which one, does not tend to defend his thesis. It's a very simple thesis. All right, I want to leave a little bit up to you guys. What is false regarding African-American agency? Political participation was high. An overwhelming majority of freedmen initially elected to office had been plantation slaves. That is false. African American churches did much to organize and encourage Black Southerners. Yes. So B is false. The 14th Amendment, did it abolish slavery? Look up 13th, 14th, and 15th. Okay. 38. What was not associated with radical or congressional Reconstruction? That is number 1 on the final Reconstruction assignment. See what they did, what they accomplished. Okay. One of these you will not find in there. That's the one you choose. Okay. On 38. Regarding the handout, subjective suggestion that instruments of social change should have accompanied political legislation during Reconstruction. What was not used as an example? So this one is the very final section of the semester. Section 2 on Reconstruction, when it states that racism was not uprooted at the source. Remember, intelligentsia includes writers, okay? People whose career is tied to academia. So intelligentsia, if I said that the writers should have come up with stuff, then that intelligentsia will have been covered. Okay. Then look up and see if there's evangelical churches in the South, if I point a finger at them, and at the Southern educational system. And see if I say anything about the Southern police system. All right. A common explanation for the failure of Reconstruction: diminished Northern interest, the Compromise of 1877, the reenfranchisement of ex-Confederate leaders, and white terrorist tactics, press coverage of alleged African-American misrule, all the above. All right, so are there any questions?
What did you say we can find number 27? I'm sorry.
It's okay. 27, let's see here. Revisionist history. Okay, that is the last number on alleged causes of the Civil War. So the first one was the Civil War inevitable? Section 2, you'll find on Lincoln. Section 3, you'll find court history and like a romantic view of it. And then section 4, the final one, is this one, revisionist history. And you'll know right away in reading that section if you think if it portrayed it as a moral crusade.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Anybody else?
I had a question for 32. It was going over something about the textbook.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
didn't hear that one.
Yeah, so on that one, I may actually go through all the students, and if they miss any of the 30, 31, 32, the textbook ones, I'm going to give to them, I think. But yeah, hopefully that won't be an issue with you guys. But yeah, I have 2 or 3 other versions of this test, but I used my old one because I wanted to get it up at the beginning of the semester. So this one happens to have the textbook in it because this semester that I wrote it, just a semester or 2 ago, I was using a textbook for the class. So 32, remember that it is it's false.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. All right, anybody else? All right. Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming faithfully. I honestly, it means a lot to me. Um, I prefer in person teaching. I think most instructors would, but it's the next best thing when you do your Zooms and you have a faithful group coming week in and week out. So I see you. I appreciate you, and I wish you guys well in everything that you do in the future.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you. So you guys take care, okay?
Thank
You
you, you
too.
too.
Thank you.